Aloha everybody, Dr. Summer Nicole here. I'm actually in Ireland teaching a 2-day yoga rehab course, and I've been wanting to make this video for quite some time. And I titled it The Hardest Month of My Life, which was actually last month. And I've just been actually waiting to be steady enough to be able to share this. So some of you know what I do for a living, and part of that is a technique called somato-emotional release, like releasing emotions from the body. And so I'm pretty well versed in doing that. And so I just wanted to share this with you because really my husband and I had like probably the hardest month of our relationship last month that we've ever had, like out of our whole entire time of knowing each other. And for me, my trust issues were triggered in a huge way. And, everybody has their own, core wounds and everything. Mine definitely has to do with trust. And so whenever it was initially triggered for me, I just remember I've never felt like so much anger and rage like in my life. And my whole nervous system was really shaky, and if I held up my hand, it would be like this for close to 3 or 4 weeks. It was pretty gnarly. And because I've had this background of doing this technique called somato-emotional release, and going into the body, and it's where you feel the emotion and where it's located in the body, and then it usually takes you to some sort of childhood memory, or image to work with. And so, as I kind of started this like healing journey of like getting myself back to neutral, I did that, and I sought like some healing sessions with people, and had a really great, I'll try to find the link and post it in the comments, a really great followed along Brahman Carey Sat song that was on trust. So doing some energy healing around that and everything. But what I came to find after kind of weeks and weeks of kind of like, dredging up old stuff as we do, looking at, our childhood trauma, and kind of like looking at the why of like why we feel the way we do. I just became so exhausted and so tired of doing that. And the amount of, and it was like I would just keep getting re-triggered, like, a week later, like I would just keep getting re-triggered, and I was just like, oh, like I'm back here again, even after I had kept, looking at it and where it's coming from, and, why I was feeling this way, and working with the emotions in the body, and da. So I got to a point where I literally felt like, and this is what I, told the people around me, I was like, I feel like it's an endless amount of anger and rage. Like, I feel like it's not even a normal amount of anger and rage. And I got to a point where I just knew that there's nothing like me going back to process a childhood memory, or, even something from another lifetime or whatever. I was like, it's not going to cut it. Like, it's just not going to do it. Like, I felt like the intensity of the anger and the rage was such that going back to one little memory, or processing one little thing, it's like, no, it's not going to cut it. And also what wasn't going to cut it, which has worked for me in the past, is actually just, releasing the anger, of whether it's, throwing a pillow up against the wall or punching or whatever it is, I just got to a point where I was like, there's nothing is going to help the amount of intensity and depth that this anger and rage is. So James and I ended up in California, and we were staying at a friend's house, and she does work with people. Her name's Amber Hartnell. I'm going to give her a big shout out. And she created a space for me where I was able to, a really safe container, where I was actually able to, it's like the first time I feel like I've ever gone through a really big emotional release process without the story and without the mental process. It was like, 20 minutes of like straight, like physical cellular release, and for me, it like was all coming up through my throat, and like through my voice, and all of that. And it gave me this like embodied experience of being able to move through a huge emotional hurdle, you could say, or something that just kept showing up, over and over again. I was just being triggered over and over and over again. That just kept showing up. It's like it gave me this embodied experience of being able to move through something that big, that without having to mentally process the story behind it. And I want to share this because I'm curious too of just like where other people are at, and what you're doing and what's helping you too. If you do have something that's coming up, an emotion that perhaps it's like way, way, way more intense or in deep than you've ever experienced before, and perhaps it's lasting like way longer than it was before. For me, it's like 4 to 6 weeks, I'd say, of like just keep being triggered, and then just emotional exhaustion, and then the nervous system, being really shaky and really wobbly, and then feeling like I'd get a couple of steps forward and then triggered again, and I'd be right back to like, just like wanting to curl into a ball. And I have to say that, this work that I did with Amber, and I'd like to do it a couple more times, and I'm just sharing it because it was really powerful for me, and somehow way less exhausting than actually going through, emotional release, and actually going through whatever it was attached to. So, and I'm not saying like, and I love somato emotional release. I love like somatic experiencing work, like, intuitive healing sessions, any of that stuff where you actually, I think it can be really, really, really beneficial in some instances in your life, in some periods in your life, whenever you need to unravel that and you need to know where your triggers are coming from and why you feel the way you do. However, like whenever, if you've been doing the work for years and years, and you get to a point like where I did, where it's just like, oh God, this is so long and so exhausting and so intense and isn't really sustainable for my system to keep feeling this way. Like I need something radically different. That's what I wanted to share, is that, the work that I did with Amber, and being held in a really safe container, and being able to fully release like a bunch of, I don't want to say fully because I feel like I could do a couple more sessions with her, but to release big, huge, deep, intense emotions without the mental processing and without the story. So that's that piece. And then the other piece is that maybe some of you already listened to him, but I've been listening to a lot of Matt Kahn YouTube videos and everything. And I was listening to one last night or night before that was titled Finding Safety. And it was really, I felt like it was really pertinent because it was actually just talking about whenever you have a huge emotion, what if you just changed your belief system into like, instead of saying like, when I have this big emotion of fear, anger, whatever it is, that instead of saying to yourself like, I'm not safe, or if that's the unconscious, conversation of like, I don't feel safe because I feel all this fear and because I feel all this anger, he like switched it and says, what if you changed your belief, or what if the truth is that you could actually, you could say, okay, I have this fear, and that's why, or because I'm having this massive emotion, or this massive emotional release, I'm safe to feel it. That was really, really big for me to hear. It's just like, okay, like even if I feel scared out of my, freaking mind, and I feel totally unsafe in my body, and my nervous system is like acting up and whatever, to actually switch it and be like, because I'm experiencing this, I'm actually safe to feel it. And he talked quite a bit about the, even just the unconscious collective, and that a lot of, healers, light workers on the planet are actually here processing a lot of this like unconscious collective. Maybe that's what was happening for me. I have no idea. But it was, all I know is that it was just so much more freaking intense, and so much more, deep and like prolonged than I've ever experienced before. And so I just wanted to share that with you guys, and also would love to hear your comments and seeing like what's happening with you guys, if any of this stuff is actually like happening to you, where things are way more intense and deep than you've ever felt before, and maybe that it's lasting a little bit longer, and like what's helping you, you know, and what's helping you move through it. And so that's like kind of my big takeaway that I wanted to share, is that like moving through it, you know, especially if you've done a whole bunch of processing in the past before of your childhood trauma and all this, is that it's actually really freaking freeing to, you know, just have a full like body, physical, emotional release, without going back to, you know, the incident that caused you trauma, or whatever it is. So anyways, I hope that's helpful for some of you, or any of you that are interested. And please feel free to leave comments if you're willing to share what's been up for you, or what's been helping. I figure that it's worth sharing, you know, some of the gold whenever we go through some of these super tough, intense times. So I hope you guys are moving through it with ease and grace, and know that you're not alone, and wishing you a lot of love. Aloha.